It seems like everybody online has an opinion on the nation of Israel. Some people are really quick to defend Israel, and then other people are really quick to condemn them in anything that they do. Now, I'm not here to give you an opinion on what party you should fall into, so what way you should think regarding your political party. I don't really care about that. What I do want to give you is a biblical thought from the Bible that might help you reshape the way that you engage in the rhetoric concerning the nation of Israel. And where we'll find that is in Romans chapter number 2, where Paul addresses the Jews themselves and gives them something to think about in regards to condemning others. So we get to Romans chapter number 2, and we find this principle in Romans chapter number 2 that can help us in how we engage with this. Now, I want to clarify that this principle that we find here is not necessarily the principle that we can only use in the nation of Israel. You can use it for any facet of life, but just for the sake of the contemporary arguments being made against Israel, we can use this to help us think in that light, if that made any sense. So when it comes to Romans chapter number 2, what we need to understand is that Romans chapter number 1 is a condemnation of all mankind, blatant sinners specifically, those who live with a willful ignorance of who God is, those who have no desire to live a religious life, for all intents and purposes, atheists, agnostics, those who live apart from God. This list condemns them very quickly. And that's important to know because when you get to Romans chapter number 2, Paul starts off by telling them that those who judge those kind of people, you actually end up condemning your own self by judging those kinds of people. And so the whole chapter, the second chapter of Romans, is a condemnation of the religious person who is quick to judge the other people in their sins. Now, what Romans chapter number 2 is it's not a chapter that tells us that we can't condemn. That would be the wrong conclusion to draw. Actually, we are encouraged to judge and to condemn those who do wrong. What we have to understand is that Romans chapter number 2 is a condemnation of the heart, the motivating heart behind the condemnation. And that's important. The Jews would condemn those, and in their condemnation think that they are doing good enough in order to be saved, thinking that in their condemnation of others, they were gaining their own type of righteousness. And this is the easiest, there's a very easy example for us to digest in this thought process in John chapter number 8. Remember, the Jews brought this woman caught in adultery to Jesus Christ, and they told Jesus that she was caught in the very act, and that therefore she is condemned by the law to death. And is that true? Yes, that was true. That according to the law, that she should have been killed for the crime that she committed. But what Jesus does is flip the script on them, and it's a very interesting thing that Jesus says, "He who has no sin, let him cast the first stone." So very quickly, what we'll find is that within a few minutes, every man that was ready to kill her had ended up walking away, condemned and convicted by his own conscience. And Jesus told the woman, "Where are your accusers?" And then he told her to get up and to go and to sin no more. So what we have to understand is in that story, the Jews were very quick to condemn somebody else about their sin, not realizing in their condemnation they were committing also the same sin. That's Romans chapter number 2. It's a complete condemnation of a misrepresented condemnation. So, and I also have to bring this up. It's not a condemnation of condemnation. Obviously, we are to condemn those who do wrong. All of Romans chapter number 2 is a condemnation. And so it's ironic how that all works, but it's all there. And so how does this apply to what we're talking about today? Many people are really quick to condemn the Jews in the way that they act. And there's probably a lot of good reasons why people would do that. What we have to watch out for, though, is a quick condemnation of the Jewish nation to make ourselves look better, to establish our righteousness. That is what the Jews were doing, and that was what Paul was calling them out on. And it's the very same trap that we can fall into if we're not careful. So, how do I not fall into this trap? How do I not fall into it that when I'm talking about Israel with condemnation fueled by my own pride, that I'm not condemning my own self? Well, we have to make sure that our heart is in the right place when we condemn other people. This is extremely important. This is extremely important to understand. And might I say that some of us might be a little bit slower to condemn others if we took some time to think about why we were doing it. When I condemn others, it ought not to be because I'm trying to establish my own self righteousness. It ought to be because I understand that Christ's judgment and God's judgment is according to truth, and that he will render every man according to his deeds. The law in the Bible is not for me to pick up and to hit others over the head with it. It's a mirror for me to pick up and to look at and to understand that my sin is a condemnation of my own self and that I fall short of the glory of God. So that is what we have to understand first when it comes to the law, when it comes to condemning others, is that it very quickly condemns our own self. That's why Paul, when he gets to chapter 3, has a quick condemnation of all mankind by saying there is none righteous, no, not one. Every man falls short. And it's very easy for us to pick up the law and to throw it at other people and to condemn everybody else and not to realize that it also condemns our own self. So I must understand that every man is going to give an account of himself to God. I fall short of that. How do I go to God and not have to pay for the crimes that I've committed? Well, by grace found in the person of Jesus Christ, I can be cleared of my account of sin and be given new life and life more abundantly through the person of Jesus Christ and find forgiveness and redemption through his blood. And that's amazing. But that also helps me rethink how I judge people. That if it were not for the grace of God, I would be in the same boat as them. And so when I go to condemn people, I ought to do it not with the heart to establish my own righteousness, but to reveal their unrighteousness in hopes that they would understand that they fall short of the glory of God as well. And I must do it with grace. I must do it with compassion. I must speak the truth in love, knowing that I was in the same place. And that were it not for the grace of God, there go I. And so when we think about the nation of Israel in this light, we ought to be very quick not to condemn them and to fall into the same trap that Paul was talking about in Romans chapter 2. Again, it's ironic. It's hypocritical of us to condemn them for doing what they are doing. And so Paul condemns them for judging others for their sin and to establishing their own righteousness. We can do that as well. And so we need to be careful of that. Now, again, I said this at the beginning. I said that this is not just to deal with the nation of Israel. This is every facet of life. And that's true. We should not be quick to judge most people. Now, there are some sins that you can look at and you can say, that's sin. It's wrong. But when I call people out on it, I need to make sure that my heart is in the right place. I need to make sure that I'm not just doing it to make myself look better. I need to make sure that I'm not just judging others to establish how good I am. I need to make sure that I'm judging others in a way that God judges them according to truth and state and help them understand that their wicked actions are not helping them, but Christ can forgive them of their sins. And I must do this very delicately. I must do this with an understanding that grace and compassion are available to any sinner that repents of his sin and follows after the person of Jesus Christ. So when we go and we start to give our thoughts on the nation of Israel, I would encourage you, I would implore you to take a second and to think about who you are, where you came from, and what Christ has done for you before you're quick to condemn not just the nation of Israel, but anybody.